the hadith. لن يفلح قوم ولوا أمرهم امرأة. A people who place the leader as a woman will never be successful. This is transmitted by Abu Bakr radiallahu an. It is in Bukhari, but it's in some other books as well. But what does this mean? Does this mean that it is haram to have a leader as a woman? A woman as a leader. Some people have taken this hadith and understood that from it, that they've taken this hadith. So first of all, let's understand why this hadith was said. This hadith was said at the time when the Kisra, the Persian Sassanid king, had died, and the woman became in charge. I believe her name was Boran. They put her in charge, and somebody told the Prophet that she is now in charge. And allegedly, the Prophet said this, keeping in mind that the Sassanid Empire was at war, at least, especially at that time, with the Lakhmid Arabs, who were the kind of cultural capital, the Manazira, and they killed the last, Mundhir ibn Nu'man, and they killed. There was this huge, and we've covered that in the story previously. So, keeping that in mind, and the Manazira, the Lakhmid, the Hira was their capital. They are the one who many of the major poets were, where Arabic today as we know it comes from as well. So this is where the allegiance of the Arabs was anti-Sassanid, anti-Persian. This is why even in the Quran it says about Rome, which was the Byzantium, the Byzantines. They have been defeated, but they will again be successful. And on that day, يَوْمَئِذٍ يَفْرَحُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, the believers will be happy. Why? Because the believers were more aligned with the Christians than they were with the Sassanid Persians at the time. So when this female is placed as the kind of queen, this statement is allegedly said by the Prophet ﷺ. This is, once again, we say allegedly because there isn't 100% certainty that the Prophet ﷺ said this, but let's go with the hypothesis that this was said by the Prophet ﷺ. Now, the next question is that, is this statement descriptive, or is it religiously prescriptive? Okay, so is it descriptive from a psychosocial environmental perspective, or is it prescriptive? So is the Prophet ﷺ describing this? Is he describing, or is he inscribing, making this a law within Islam? Is he teaching Islam, or is the Prophet ﷺ describing a phenomenon? This is where people disagreed. So, for example, because you have to remember, as Imam Qarafi says, that the Prophet ﷺ, when he's engaging people, he is in different states of mind. In some states, he's engaging them as the Imam of the Muslims. In some states, he's engaging them as a judge. He may be ruling over two people. In some states of mind, he's engaging them as a person amongst them, like as an Arab who lives in Hijaz amongst them, like saying, hey, like when they say, would you want to eat this? He says, no, I don't eat this. And they say, oh, is it haram? And the Prophet said, no, it's not haram. It's just, I don't like it. Our people never used to eat it. That's the famous hadith. Or when the Prophet says to Barira, marry Maghith. And she says, oh, is this religious? Like, is this to prescribe something is to mandate it, to make it obligatory. Is this like, are you prescribing something? And the Prophet said, no, this is just a suggestion. And then she says, oh, in that case, no, I won't marry him. Or it's like in the time of Badr, When the Prophet says, why don't we set up camp here? And the person says, Ya Rasulullah, is this revelation or is this an opinion? And the Prophet said, no, it's just an opinion. And then he says, well, in that case, I think the person says to the Prophet, what about over there? Because we're closer to the well and we've got a vantage point to attack. And the Prophet says, you're right. Let's set it up over there. Or in the instant when the Prophet sees them cross-pollinating the wheat that they used to do. And the Prophet says, that's strange. Why do you do that? So they didn't do it. And the following harvest was terrible. And they came complaining to the Prophet. They said that, and the Prophet said, why are you complaining to me? And they said, well, you said, why are you doing that? That's strange. And he said, I just said that's strange. I never said it's from Islam. The Prophet said, Antum a'lamu bi umuri dunyakum. You guys, he said, you're more knowledgeable about your worldly affairs. I just said I find it strange that you guys cross-pollinate. I never said this is from God, that don't do this. I was just speaking as a person. I wasn't speaking as the Prophet of God. So when the Prophet is engaging in different things, there's different states of mind that are active. So now let's take this hadith. So we're going with this statement has been said. Is the Prophet saying that, oh, these people who have placed a woman as their leader will never be successful, a description based on the socio-economic factors of the people? Because like the Prophet is he's aware, like today we are aware of what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. When we don't have to be there, but we all know what's going on. The Prophet knew about them attacking the Mundhirs, the Manadir are fighting back. Some of the battles we've mentioned where they were defeated by the Bakr ibn Wa'il tribe and by other tribes that attacked them. And we've done all of these segments. The Prophet is aware of these things, the Byzantines attacking them and how they're struggling, how the Sassanid legacy of over 1,000 years is crumbling. The Prophet is aware of these, just as today we are aware of kind of global factors. Now, to crown it all off, not only have all of their kings become so weak, and these are people who are very boastful, very so on, they wouldn't even allow, they had such and such person in charge, and he used to claim to be like a god, and people did this, and some people challenged him, and now it comes down to when the king has died, they've placed a woman. Like, I know there's no way that's going to work. Like, these people are definitely going to flop. Like, that kingdom is going to crumble. It's no way. It's like, it's if a person was to say, like, imagine all of a sudden there's all these candidates to get in charge, and they put this really old man who is almost senile. One could say almost, we're speaking about Biden here, but somebody places somebody in charge and you say, well, this is definitely this country's going to the dogs now. There's no way that they're going to, you put a man like that in charge, an old man, any country that's being run by an old man that old is going to be ruined. So is this statement coming as a description given the kind of socio-political affairs of the environment, that the Prophet says, knowing what's going on and all the turmoil therein, that a people who now place a woman in charge, those men are never going to accept that woman. That's like, because it's the Sassanid Empire, and that too, it's crumbling, and there's all this infighting, and now you put a woman in charge in that climate, they're never going to succeed. Was this descriptive, or was it prescriptive? Was the Prophet saying, this is now a fiat ruling in Islam, that it is haram for a woman to rule a people, because if she does, they will never attain success? So there's these two ways of looking at what is going on. some people took it to say that the Prophet was prescribing here, that he was giving a ruling within Islam and trying to say that now henceforth any woman that, or let's make it clear that because the Persian woman has, let's make it clear given this instance that any nation, that any civilization that takes a woman as a leader is doomed by the fate of God, and that is by divine decree. Some people have taken it to mean that. However, many other people would understand the other ruling, which makes sense, because after the Prophet ﷺ, his own wife Aisha radiallahu an was in charge of the very famous battle, which is controversial, the Ma'arikatul Jamal, the battle of Jamal, of the camel. She is in charge. She leads the whole campaign going up to Basra. So people had put Aisha in charge, and people like Zubair were in that army, were in that group, let's say, but they had placed in charge of it Aisha radiallahu anha. Obviously, they would have had a much better understanding of the deen, that they were so close to the Prophet. If they felt that putting the woman as a leader would have been something so wrong in Islam, that they surely, that's not how they would go about things. So that's how this interpretation would see it. The other way would see that no, this is this is haram always, this is doomed in Islam. And they may even interpret, they may say that Aisha radiallahu anha was kind of leading, but technically maybe there was a man that was the leader, but she was just the prominent person. So they may give that kind of an interpretation. So this is how people take away from a ruling, but it goes to show that here is a ruling, and how it's not simple to say something, because just a statement, first of all, ascertaining whether ascertaining whether it was actually said, or whether it was paraphrased, or whether it was, is another discussion. But even going with the hypothesis, this is the hadith, this was said, there's still many ways to look at it, simply as a description. Just as today, if there was certain things going, and you said, you know what, if I said, any person riding a motorbike in this day and age, or any person riding a bike in this day and age, is never going to make it. If I made a statement like that, now what would you understand from my statement? What am I trying to say, and what is the context? So surely if I say something, any person riding a bike in this day and age is definitely not going to make it. Or why am I saying that? First, the context. Secondly, do I mean not make it in anything? Do I mean because there's been certain road traffic accidents and people are kind of knocking over cyclists, and people are doing all these kind of things? And so that's a very more profound way of looking and reading texts. Okay, people, with that, let's wrap that up.